Welcome to Momentous. I am Pastor Rebecca Great, the pastor mission developer for Momentous and the host for our weekly podcast. At Momentous, we believe that God is present with us in each and every single one of our moments. We believe that our stories are connected to God's story and to one another's stories. We believe that this connection and relationship changes our lives and our entire world. So before we begin, I invite you to take a deep breath in. Hold it while you count to 3, and then slowly release that breath. For most of my entire time of serving in leadership in the church, be that as a college student or a seminary student or a chaplain or an intern or as a pastor, I have consistently been involved in leading or coordinating youth ministry. This means that I can reliably predict that the months of August, September, and May will be completely bonkers. May in particular. But this was the first year I heard the month of May accurately described as Maycember. And if you go to our website for the transcript of this episode, I have linked the YouTube videos that introduced me to this label. Between all of the end of year concerts and plays and musicals and tournaments to end the school sport year and applications and fees turned in for summer camps and traveling teams and then vacation planning and the school year ending and having all of the end of year potlucks and carnivals and graduations and moving up ceremonies on top of all of the regularly occurring things like work and school and doctor's appointments and lessons and practices. And somewhere in the midst of that is everything springing to life in our yards if we are living somewhere that has yards, and all of that needing to be tended back. Because if you aren't able to stay on top of that during the month of May, you know exactly how much work you will need to invest for the rest of the warm months. Ask me how I know. Now, in the midst of all of these things, one other piece that was on my calendar was a Friday night and all-day Saturday retreat with a few congregations in the area. And we covered a lot of really great things about discerning and communicating our beliefs and how those shape all of the ministry and activities that occur through our congregations. And during the presentation, one sentence jumped out. Busyness does not equal faithfulness. And I laughed very loudly inside my head as I read and then emphasized that sentence. It seemed preposterous for that to be spoken in the midst of the month of May. I have always been a person who loves naps. Now, I do have a friend who has dedicated time on their calendar for a daily nap, and I aspire to this. Most of my days, I don't have the opportunity for a nap, but on the days that I do get one, I am a much happier and kinder person. Now, occasionally, there are times my body tells me I must nap. There is no other option. And typically, that comes at times when I am incredibly anxious or busy, or I've been around other people who are incredibly anxious or busy. It's like my body's built-in response for how to reintegrate and recover some of the energy that I've expended. Now, there have been, during this month of May, there have been multiple days over the past month that I have had the luxury of a nap. But it has been as a response to the busyness and the anxiety that I have been around. My body was telling me to recharge and rest. Now, there is a faith word that surrounds this concept of resting, and that word is Sabbath. And it's not an idea that is specific to Lutherans or to Christians. It's a spiritual practice that's embodied and embraced by the Jewish faith. The Muslim faith, as well as a few other faith traditions, also practice sacred rest. But the specific name for that practice might not be Sabbath. So for the sake of this podcast, when Sabbath is mentioned, we're going to be using the understanding that I know the best. As a pastor serving in the Lutheran Church of the Christian faith. So there will likely be differences from those who follow other denominations or faith traditions, and that is okay. But I don't want it to be construed that I am speaking for all traditions who have a belief or a practice of sacred rest. So for us, this practice is rooted in two different stories from the Bible, but we're only going to focus on one of them for this podcast. And this story is the very first story in the entire Bible, found at the beginning of the book of Genesis. This is a story about how creation came into being. So I'm going to read this story to you, and if you're familiar with the story, it might sound a bit different. The version of the story has been adapted from the Message Bible, which was published back in 2002, and it's a paraphrased version of the Bible, and it's written in language that sounds closer to how we talk in our everyday conversations, rather than being a true word-for-word translation from the original languages into English. Because, by the way, did you know that the Bible wasn't originally written in English? And there's lots of different translations. More on that at some point in a different podcast. So this is a reading from the book of Genesis. First, this. God created the heavens and the earth. All you see, all you don't see. Earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, an inky blackness. God's spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss. God spoke, "Light!" And light appeared. And God saw that light was good, and separated light from dark. God named the light day. God named the dark night. It was evening. It was morning. Day 1. God spoke, "Sky. In the middle of the waters, separate water from water." God made sky. God separated the water under sky from the water above sky. And there it was. God named sky the heavens. It was evening. It was morning. Day 2. God spoke, "Separate. Water beneath heaven gather into one place. Land appear." And there it was. God named the land earth. God named the pooled water ocean. God saw that it was good. God spoke, "Earth, green up. Grow all varieties of seed-bearing plants, every sort of fruit-bearing tree." And there it was. Earth produced green seed-bearing plants, all varieties, and fruit-bearing trees of all sorts. God saw that it was good. It was evening. It was morning. Day 3. God spoke, "Lights, come out. Shine in heaven's sky. Separate day from night. Mark seasons and days and years. Lights in heaven's sky to give light to earth." And there it was. God made 2 big lights, the larger to take charge of day, the smaller to be in charge of night. And God made the stars. God placed them in the heavenly sky to light up earth and oversee day and night, to separate light and dark. God saw that it was good. It was evening. It was morning. Day 4. God spoke, "Swarm, ocean, with fish and all sea life. Birds, fly through the sky over the earth." God created the huge whales, all the swarm of life in the waters, and every kind and species of flying birds. God saw that it was good. God blessed them. "Prosper, reproduce, fill ocean. Birds reproduce on earth." It was evening. It was morning. Day 5. God spoke, "Earth, generate life. Every sort and kind. Cattle and reptiles and wild animals, all kinds." And there it was. Wild animals of every kind, cattle of all kinds, every sort of reptile and bug. God saw that it was good. God spoke, "Let us make human beings in our image. Make them reflecting our nature so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, earth itself, and every animal that moves on the face of the earth." God created human beings. God created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. God created them. God blessed them. "Prosper, reproduce, fill earth, take charge. Be responsible for fish in the sea and birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of earth." Then God said, "I've given you every sort of seed-bearing plant on earth, and every kind of fruit-bearing tree, given them to you for food. To all animals and all birds, everything that moves and breathes, I give whatever grows out of the ground for food." And there it was. God looked over everything God had made. It was so good. So very good. It was evening. It was morning. Day 6. Heaven and earth were finished, down to the last detail. By the 7th day, God had finished God's work. On the 7th day, God rested from all God's work. God blessed the 7th day. God made it a holy day, because on that day, God rested from work, all the creating that God had done. This is the story of how it all started. of heaven and earth when they were created. In this Bible story, this telling of how all of creation came to be, there was time and space given for the necessity of rest. Rest or restoration is a literal part of the creation story, not an appendix or a collection of endnotes tacked on at the end that we can consult and engage in if we want to learn more about the things that occurred earlier in the story. Sabbath is a day, a time of rest created so that we could dwell with God and God could dwell with us. It is a day, a time of rest created so that we have the strength, energy, and creativity to work with and for others who need help living lives that are fruitful and thriving. It's a day, a time of rest created so that relationships and connection can be restored and healed. Because here's the thing about the Sabbath. It's not time to rest so that you can plan something else. It's not about getting rest because we have overworked and overextended ourselves. It's not about getting rest so that we can then go back out and overwork and overextend ourselves all over again. It's not about being a reward for getting everything marked off your to-do list or finishing a big project. Because at its core, Sabbath is about life. It was created, yes, for rest and for rejuvenation and for restoration and for relationship between God and everything that had been created to dwell together. Sabbath is about pausing to listen to what God is calling you to do for the sake of the world and for those around you. It's about coming together and deepening our relationships with God and with one another so that we can know that we are not alone, that we work together to bring about peace and wholeness in this world that God has made. Sabbath is about living a completely different rhythm to our lives than one that expects productivity for the entire 16 hours we are awake, regardless of the fact that a typical workday is 8 or 9 hours, and there's some debate in how effective that schedule is. Now, spending an entire 24-hour day resting from all things that even sniff of work seems inconceivable. And for those of us who weren't raised in households that even have a few minutes of rest, this is a completely new idea. Holding a sacred space and honoring a Sabbath day is an intentional practice. That means it's not something that you can instantly do and never look back because you will never mess up and miss it again. Each week offers a chance to try again and to Sabbath for a little longer or a little freer from work or a little more connected to God. And this brings me to our theme for this summer. Our theme is Sabbath stops. Now, for so many of us, summer means a shift in our schedule, because the way our calendars look from June through August is much different than September through May. And for many of us, we will be traveling either to places nearby or places that are far away. And if you have ever traveled on a road trip, you know one of the biggest points of concern is where is the next rest stop so we can get food or something to drink or to move around or to tend to whatever our bodies need and to breathe in some different air than that air that is inside the car with us for hours. So we can't wait to see you at our first Sabbath stop next week. I'm going to invite you to take another deep breath in, to hold it while you count to 3, and then slowly release it as we pray. A prayer for slowing down. God, who included resting in the creation. Sometimes it feels like there isn't time to stop. Won't the world end if I don't work on 5 projects simultaneously? Won't everything be terrible if I don't wake up and immediately start working until I close my eyes and go to sleep? Won't you love me less if I'm not productive all the time? Help us find a space to connect with you. Remind us that you already love us the most possible amount you can ever love us. We don't have to prove our worth through completed to-do lists. Help us Sabbath with you. Amen. Thank you for joining us for our weekly Moment to Us. We are looking forward to growing with each of you and are so grateful you are already a part of the Momentous community. Thank you to our mission partners, the Southern Ohio Synod and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Their financial contributions and prayer have been instrumental in bringing our ministry into existence. And I want to say thank you to Advent Lutheran Church in Columbus, Ohio, for calling me to preach and lead worship this morning. Yes, this morning, while their pastor is taking a much needed vacation. If you want to join us for worship to learn more about a story where it is glaringly obvious that God has shown up in our midst, they will be live streaming their 11 o'clock worship service on Facebook and on YouTube. In Columbus, we are on Eastern Standard Time. If you want to join us online, you can find them on Facebook and YouTube using their handle, which is at Advent ELC. So at ADVENT ELC. I've also direct linked their Facebook and YouTube channels in this podcast's transcript, which is located on our website, momentous.social. Now, if you have noticed God this week, either through something that happened or through something you experienced through our podcast, I would love to know about it so that we can all give thanks for God's presence with you. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You can send us a direct message through our Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or TikTok accounts. You can send an email using our email address, which is dailymomentous@gmail.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail, which may be featured in an upcoming podcast episode. And to do that, you can record a voice memo on your phone and then email that in to us. And if you go to our website, there are some tips and tricks for how to do that in the best way there. But however you are engaging with Momentous, we hope that it means you are growing in your faith and noticing God's presence with you. When a podcast or a social media post resonates with you, I hope you share it on your social media or share it directly with someone you know to help others grow in their faith. Now, if you want to support the ministry of Momentous, engaging with us online is one way to do so. If you are able to give financially, you can visit our website and use the donate link that is located there. Each one-time or recurring gift ensures that the Momentous community continues to grow. We give thanks for each and every single one of you, for being a part of the Momentous community and for listening to God's call to try something new, and for beginning to notice God's presence even more frequently in your life and in our communities and in our world. Until our next podcast, remember to breathe deeply and that God is present with you every single moment.